All right, we come back home then. President Cyril Ramaphosa addresses the Durban Chamber of Business at Inkosi Albert Luthuli ICC in Durban. Let's take you there now.
Of approach to doing work, where war rooms were set up in various locales in the province, and they were largely used to solve key problems, be it HIV/AIDS and societal problems and many other problems, including violence and many others. Now we have appropriated the models that are being used in various provinces and have fashioned this district development model, which, as I said, Dr. Inkosi Zuma has now been asked to lead, so that we're able, in a fairly comprehensive way, to get everyone in society, various organizations, various disciplines, if you like, to work together. Now, you are an important cog in this wheel as business. Today we meet you on your own, granted. Going forward, we want you to become part of these Kauleza forums that we are setting up. And today we felt that we should spend time with you, as we are going to spend with our branches and many others, spend time with you to understand where you are. And I'm pleased to have heard that you are upbeat, your spirits are up, you are not downbeaten, and that to me is what has inspired me. And through this model, we would like to execute what mandate we were given when we were elected by our conference, that we should build our economy by building these compacts, by working closely with the private sector, hand in hand, on a number of issues, be they job creation, be they solving the problems that you have alluded to, the problems of the blockages and the constraints. Those are the types of problems that this model will be able to solve much more effectively, as I will outline. What this means is that we want to emerge with one plan for this district. We've got 44 districts around the country and 8 metros, all put together. That gives us the totality of the districts and metros that we now need to focus on. Our objective as an administration is that by the time our term ends, we must, government, working together with all various sectors, must have touched the lives of our people in all those areas. We started off in OR Tambo, which is in the Eastern Cape, largely a rural district, which has enormous challenges. And even as we spoke to our people there, we said, this is the new way in which we are now seeking to work, where government no longer tries to solve problems in every of our areas in the country on a sort of rifle basis, one-shot basis. We want a comprehensive approach where government, working together with business, religious bodies, and many other entities, descends on districts and solves problems comprehensively. Granted, some of the problems may not be solved within a week, 2 months, 3 months, some will be solved within years. But what that will do is to give line of sight to everyone in the district about our plans of how we seek to address the problems and the challenges, so that people know that yes, if we do not have a teachers' college, somebody mentioned that, and we would like to have a teachers' college in the district, when are we budgeting to have that teachers' college built? If we still have pit latrines in our schools, and we then should have a full number, the actual real number of the schools that still have pit latrines, by when do we want those pit latrines to be eliminated? If we have young people, as we do, who are not in employment, who are not in training, what programs are we going to put in place to address the challenges that young people have. So everything is then laid out. Now, what we want to emerge with is to have one plan for each district. Now, wonderfully here, you are in a metro. You're different from OR Tambo. Here, much more developed, much more well endowed with infrastructure. But this is also where poverty resides. We have found in this district, because this method and model gives us the opportunity to have a closer and a much more introspective look at the profile of the district. We're able to see how many people live here, not only live here, but how do they live? How many people are poor? How many people are below the, if you like, the breadline? How many people are wealthy? And how many people are paying taxes and all that? But this district has enormous challenges. The types of challenges that requires all of us to work together. And hence, this overarching mandate that we were given, that go out, build the economy of our country, work on a compact basis with all key role players, and you as business play a critical role in that. So in all this, then business should find its own role to play. And this is where we will be saying, as you participate with us, with government, yes. And by the way, this is all three layers of government working together. Now, what this means is that our mayor, Kaunda, is no longer going to be left to his wiles, where he is a lone player and feels lonely and sometimes cries that nobody cares for me or loves me and all that. This is where he's now going to get the province working much more closely with him, and national also working closely with him. And that is why, even as we are launching it, the entire weight of government is being brought to bear on the district, so that every government department that can have a role to play in making sure that we address the needs of our people is here. Only one that could be possibly excused would be DERCO International Affairs, and one other, and so forth. But for the main part, the police are here, the transport is here and should be here, and social development, everyone is here. So government has descended on eThekwini to try and see how best we can all work. And it raises a question. And the question that it raises is, what is our individual roles? What is our role as national government? So national government drafts the budget, but what informs that budget? How does the budgeted amount cascade down to the metro to address the challenges that our people have, be it housing, be it water? As it was said, we have a huge water challenge here, be it the roads, be it the infrastructure, and so forth. So we're now going to begin to move towards a point where the budgetary process is going to be informed from the bottom, informed at the metro level as we draft one plan at the metro level, cascading upwards to the province and finally to the national. So in the end, like it is said in the National Development Plan, we should, as a nation, have one plan. Hitherto, we've had the municipalities in the metro having their own little plans. IDPs that are different, that do not talk to what the metro wants to achieve at times. And sometimes those plans are drafted by consultants, and after they are drafted, they are put at the bottom of the shelf or the desk. We now want to have one wholesome plan that speaks to everything. And in that plan, we need to address the issues of women. Women are in the majority in our country. They need to know that the budget that is going to be drafted addresses their issues, because they are the majority and they are the ones. Yeah. They are the ones who suffer most. They bear the heaviest burden. Young people, how are we addressing the challenges that young people face? So what we are now doing is much more a dynamic and exciting way of doing work, where no one pulls in one direction or other. And I always cite this example. You know, Deputy President Mabuza says when he was Premier in Mpumalanga, he's sitting in his office doing his work, and there's a Minister of Water who he hears has arrived in his province, coming to launch a massive project of more than 250 million, and the Premier knew nothing about it. That just showed you how the disjuncture that we have had actually worked, because everyone had their own pet programs and they had proprietorship. This is mine. Like children say, my daughter used to say, "It's mine, it's mine, it's mine." So now everyone is now linked. We are interconnected. We do things in a way that is going to advance the interests of our people, and everybody has line of sight of what this plan is. What this calls for is, what is it that the business community is going to do? How are you going to invest? What are you going to invest? Where are you going to invest? And it all links in. As you have heard today, and some of you were there, we've just come back from launching the Marathon factory right here at the Durban Trade Port. It was a wonderful occasion, but it was also great because it was a direct implementation of what was promised, or committed rather, at our investment conference, which we held last year, and we're going to hold another one. So in that regard, we would know in advance what the planning is. We would know what type of infrastructure needs to be put in place to support that, so that things don't happen in a haphazard way and they don't happen by surprise or by shock. So we then, all of us, business, government, become closely linked, and we work together so that even the problems that you have raised today should find a greater and much more effective platform, so that you don't have to wait for the president to arrive for you to articulate the problems. They should be raised and addressed at the appropriate level, you knowing very well that this is a government, both at metro level, at municipal level even, as well as provincial level, that is open to dealing with business, to solve problems, to advance the interests of our people, to create jobs, but also to foster radical economic transformation, so that we all together work as a unit, as a whole, to advance the interests of small, medium enterprises, and as we also create more and more jobs. Where we are now as a nation, we're beginning to see some green shoots. Green shoots, sometimes we become very depressed, like now we've been very depressed with the electricity. Very, very depressed. Yesterday, we were all depressed, and this morning, I haven't seen the cartoon. There's a cartoon of me doing something in the newspaper. We're so depressed. And the problem that we have with ESCOM is being resolved. And you wanted to know what caused this. What caused this? And it was not well communicated, and this is where we also need to learn, because ESCOM should have communicated immediately. As soon as the conveyor belt broke down, it should have said, South Africans, we've got a conveyor belt that is broken down, that transports coal to Medupi, and this is going to lead to the breakage of our transmission of electricity. Later, they should have then have said, we are going to lose certain power stations and so forth. We would have been more prepared. Everybody would have been more prepared, and as they didn't do that. And this is what led to it. And the problem is that it was compounded by a whole number of other things that happened. Diesel here and so forth, and this power station not working optimally and all that. And ESCOM should have realized that South Africans need transparency, they need information in real time, they need to be told what is happening, particularly with an area that affects their lives, but not only their lives, but the economy, but much more importantly, our young people who are writing matric exams, because they were negatively affected. Touch wood, we hope that electricity will be restored, as I was informed, and that will hold until the conveyor belt is repaired in a few days or so. As we move forward, we are seeking to restore policy certainty. And I'll touch on the ESCOM one in a minute or two. We're seeking to restore policy certainty because this has been raised by yourselves as business people. You had a sense a few months ago that you were operating as business people in a milieu where there was no real certainty. And we have done a lot of things to try and address that. And I will not go into details. Yesterday, the cabinet discussed the energy plan for the country going forward. And how are we going to calibrate our strategy on energy? Is our energy trajectory going to rely on? How are we going to navigate our way around renewable energy, around climate change? And all that was discussed, and it will be made public soon. And we are addressing the issue of releasing the spectrum. We are also dealing with the task of bringing down the costs of doing business. The cost of doing business, not only for business, but also the cost of living for households. And we are also making enormous progress on the issue that was raised by business when it comes to immigration. Business community raised a huge problem with us about the immigration of people who should come and boost their business operations. People with skills who are well trained, and we had put up the barricades. And we had also put up the barricades for tourists. We've now resolved all that, and in 2 or 3 weeks we are now going to upload the e-visa system that is modern and that is going to work on the basis of biometrics, so that people who want to come to South Africa, and there are thousands of them in various countries in Asia and in Europe and so on, they want to come in the Middle East, and they will sit in the comfort of their own homes, apply for visas, get the visas, and have the printed out as they arrive at our ports. So that in itself is going to boost our tourism, and particularly for this area of our country, where you still should become the leading tourist destination in our nation. And we're addressing all those issues, the ease of doing business, and you heard that we just moved up a few basis points, and obviously we want to do more. And the one-stop shop concept that we've put out is offering a number of investors a wide range of support services, and Minister Patel touched on this, company registration, tax clearance, and all that. And we mention all this because it's been important for us to increase confidence, the level of confidence that businesses should have in our economy. And they say that in the end, it is the level of confidence that can lead to the growth of your economy. And a few months ago, level of confidence was down. It was down for a whole number of reasons, and we are now seeking to boost this level of confidence. We also have been moving a great deal to implement the economic recovery and stimulus package that we put out a year ago. That is being implemented. But we're also doing something that is quite unique, which I'd like to address here. We held a job summit last year where we brought together labor, business, communities, and government. We arrived at a number of interventions that need to be acted on. And there is a presidential committee that should be receiving the report. When we first met, the report was very poor. And it occurred to me that not much work was getting done. I then decided, together with the Deputy President, that we are going to meet every first Monday of every month. And we have started doing that. And what inspired that was that the creation of jobs in our country is far too important for us not to pay attention to it. And we have been meeting. You will be amazed at the number of problems that are now being solved. And I give you one good example. One big complaint that had been raised by the private sector, which they said was impeding the creation of more jobs, was the issue of water licenses. And some of them were big companies that were saying, we want to invest 5 billion rand, but we don't get water licenses. We want to invest big time. Water licenses take more than a year, and in some cases 2 years. And we said, we want those water license people to come. They must come and explain to us why a simple water license should take more than a year. They came, we said, explain to us. They mumbled this and that and that. And we said, we are not interested. We want people to get a water license within 90 days. And now we are now going to get people getting water licenses even within a less period of time. So that goes to show the level of commitment that we have at government level to get things done and solved. We have said to the private sector, bring whatever needs to be resolved to us. Let us resolve those issues, let us attend to them, and we will call whoever is supposed to do it to come. We also called the regulator, ICASA, and we said, come and explain to us about the spectrum, because we've decided that we're going to release the broadband spectrum, and we want to know the dates. And they mumbled these dates, and we said, no, shorten those dates. Within the regulatory framework, of course, we shouldn't transgress any laws. So they are doing that. So we are moving in a very determined way to address problems and challenges as we encounter them. Which brings me to what, before I get there, we've also at the policy level, at the broad policy level, are addressing issues that are going to help to move our economy forward. You will all remember that there was a paper that was issued by Treasury, and there's been a lot of excitement. People have been talking about it, and it's wonderful because we're a country and a nation of talkers. We all have various views and ideas. We've received no less than 700 submissions, which Treasury is going through now. And that is now going to lead us to having a much more enriched document. I appointed an economic advisory council. They have also dealt with it, and these are people from various other countries and professors and all that. So we're going to emerge with a very well calibrated microeconomic policy document that is going to look at how we can remove the constraints in our economy, and it will be overlaid by a very, very progressive macroeconomic policy thrust. At the same time, we're also attending to other aspects of the microeconomy, and specifically at the sector level, which is what Minister Patel is working on. We're now developing master plans. And we have said the players in that realm should come and talk to us so that we develop clear master plans on automotives, on sugar, even on sugar, on a whole range on chemicals, gas, textiles, renewable energy, oceans economy. We want everyone in the room to calibrate what needs to be done so that we can get our economy moving forward. We're also looking at the small business level and cooperatives. We're also looking at that, how we can inject more life and activity in the small business sector. And of course, in doing all this, we're also strengthening our fiscal policies. Now, all this is going to converge finally in a few days in the issuance of our medium-term budget statement, which will be giving a policy statement, which will be giving our broad policy direction. And we will also be seeking to outline precisely what future Eskom has. Now, Eskom, as you all know, is a major, major risk and a challenge to our economy. And let me immediately say, we are not the only country in the world which is having to deal with energy generation. A few years ago, the biggest economy in the world, United States, in California, they had blackouts of note on a continuous basis. And they lived through blackouts for months and months and months. And yes, admittedly, as I said, we should not have blackouts. But we are dealing with an Eskom which was severely weakened, which was seriously targeted through the state capture process. And Eskom has been so weakened, and we now have to rebuild Eskom. We now want to reposition Eskom, and this is precisely what we will be going out to the nation with, and say this is how we are now going to reposition Eskom and deal with a number of issues. And just to name a few, we obviously have to deal with the debt. Eskom has accumulated a debt that I think no other corporation in the history of this country has ever accumulated. And it is the largest corporation in the country, non-listed though, but largest. It's got the biggest debt of all. And that debt, unfortunately, because it's state-owned, is a debt that we have a responsibility for. So we've got to manage that. So we've got to come up with proposals on how that debt is going to be managed. Because it has an overbearing negative effect on us as the sovereign, the government. And it is something that is being closely looked at by the rating agencies. They are more interested in what are you going to do with Eskom? How are you going to reform Eskom? So we've got to come up with answers. We've also got to deal with the management issues. Some of the things that have happened recently are because of management challenges that we've got. The board governance of Eskom has to be also looked at, the technical side, the operational side, and the non-payment. Our people have gotten accustomed to having this very, very negative attitude towards paying for utilizing services. Eskom is owned billions of rands by individual households that don't pay. It's also owned billions of rands by local government, and all those, a combination of all those is just bringing a heavy weight on Eskom. But we've got to solve that. We've got to come up with a clear plan, which we will be doing. So that is something that we will be addressing. And as you know, we've also had to address the strengthening of a number of institutions in our country. Institutions that were weakened, the prosecutorial institutions, the revenue collection institutions. As it is now, revenue collection was so weakened and the skills were lost that we are now going to have a huge deficit for our tax collection and not be able to pay for a number of programs that government needs to embark upon. But notwithstanding all that, our mood as South Africans is still upbeat, and I see the mood beginning to rise, and this mood is beginning to go up, and this is precisely what we see. My mood was lifted today coming to KZN, coming to launch a cell phone factory. Cell phone factory, smart cell phone, slim, one of the best, competing with your Samsungs or Huawei, with your Apple. It's now being made here, right here in KZN, right here in eThekwini. Now, that lifts my mood. It lifts my mood, and I know that as we go to our investment conference, we are going to get many more investors thronging to the shores of our country saying we are prepared to invest. So we still have a very positive story to tell to the world. And last year we saw an uptick in investments, and similarly we're beginning to see clear signs of investment interest in our country. So that positions us well to address the challenges that you put forward. You spoke at great length about the ports. Minister Patel did give you a real upbeat answer on that Minister Gordon is going to come and address all these issues, because there is quite a bit of work that is happening. And I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with my brother Tembe, who said, why does the port office headquarters not come here to KZN? I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and I don't know how you manage a port when you are so far away. You should actually be here to manage the port. We've got two here, of course, across our 3,700 kilometer coastline. We've got a few of them. We've got Richards Bay, we've got Durban, and we've got Port Elizabeth, we've got a few others in Cape Town. They need to work out precisely how those ports should be managed. And clearly, the complaints that I have heard basically means that this must be treated with a great deal of urgency. I'm also going to talk to the minister and say this is super, super urgent. This matter must be addressed, and it must be addressed yesterday. Those suspensions and those acting positions, we need to solve that so that we reposition Transnet. With immediate effect, we reposition the port processes here. And so I'd like to see that addressed. And through this way of working we now have evolved, I will be keeping a close eye on that. And in fact, I will want them to come to this Monday meeting that I hold so that they can come and explain why the port here is operating in such a poor manner. That is what I will want to see happening. Now, the issue of truck hijackings and destruction, that too is being addressed. I've sat down with the Minister of Police, and a clear strategy is being evolved on that. I am pleased to hear from Priya, my sister Priya, who said that arrests have been effected and people are going to stand trial, and much more obviously still needs to be done, and we will be doing precisely that. I'm pleased that we've got a new mayor, our mayor who is going to make sure that he cleans up the city. What I've heard about this beautiful city of Durban is that there's just litter all over, and there's grime, and there's crime, and the sewage is spilling into the sea. That has to be brought to an end. And our mayor is going to do precisely that. That I know for a sure. And in many ways, he has already started. That's the report I've been getting. He has already started. I'm not putting him in a position, no pressure, Mayor, no pressure, but you have to do your work as well. I like the notion of getting Durban to move towards being a smart city. there are quite a number of cities in the world that have become smart cities. The incidence of crime has gone down, cleanliness has gone up, grime has gone down, and so on and so on. So the notion of having Durban as a smart city appeals to me, and I think that is what we would like to see happening. Now, informal traders. The presence of informal traders is all over our cities. But I want to address this and couple it with one of the inputs that I think it was our brother, one of our brothers who spoke about our people do businesses in the townships. The townships is where the money is. They are the consumers. And what we don't have in our country are markets. We have not created markets. And because we have not created markets where people can go and trade properly in a formal way, people then trade on the pavements of the streets. In other countries, they create markets where you know that you are going to a market where you will find everything that you want. And it may be an alternative market other than a shopping mall, but it is still a market. And I've been arguing that what we now need to do is to create markets, yes, some places in the city and also in the townships. Our townships must be places where people do not only go home to sleep, they must trade, they must also manufacture. Because once we have markets, markets are a great attraction, not only to traders, but to consumers as well. They come, and that is where you drive demand for your goods, and that is where the supply angle then comes in, and suppliers can then manufacture goods to be sold there. Now, one of our programs on township economies is going to have to move in that direction. Now, our Minister of Small Business is also focusing on how we can boost the capability and the sustainability of small, medium enterprises. In other economies, it's the small, medium enterprises that are the key drivers of the economy, and they're real employers. And they employ up to 60 to 70% of the people employed. For instance, in Germany, it's your small, medium enterprises. That is the way that we should be going. I think we are running out of time. They are beginning to look at me with lion eyes. So I need to come to a conclusion. Are we still fine?
Yeah.
If we're still fine, that's fine, because I do. We were having a very interesting discussion with the economic advisors. One of them said, one of the things that we are not really paying close attention to in our country, that is now the Economic Advisory Council, they said we are not placing a lot of emphasis on the informal economy, because that is where your small and medium enterprises are. And they were saying, pay attention to that, create infrastructure, enabling processes for them to operate, because if they do, quite a number of them will employ 2, 3, 5, 10 people and even more. And this is precisely what we now need to do as a nation, to focus on the economy where our people are, in the rural areas and also in the townships. And this is what brings me to the point that Premier Sihle Zikalala was saying when he made this plea to big business. And big business now need to be much more inclusive, to be inclusive in its operations and be able to delineate areas and aspects of their business which should be parceled out to small and medium enterprises, where they should go and procure certain of the inputs of their materials as they make a whole number of things to small and medium enterprises. If we do this, we will then be able to boost the growth of our economy. We've always complained that your big businesses are monopolies, and they are monopolies not only in the way that they operate and their ownership and all that, but also in the way that they actually distribute their goods into the market. They manufacture their goods solely on their own, and they often rely maybe on certain suppliers. And we are saying, get out of that cocoon. Get out of that cocoon, go and support small, medium enterprises and support them as black-owned, but more importantly, as women-owned enterprises, and support the women of our country so that they can continue supporting their own families. Women are more capable, much more capable, I must say, in terms of even running businesses. And that is what we need to be focusing our attention on. And I want to make a call to your larger businesses. Find a way as a large business to work with small, medium enterprises and keep on increasing in your value chain that participation of your small and medium enterprises. By so doing, you will then be able to help in growing the economy of our country. And this is the type of conversation that I'd like to see happening at the Khawuleza Forum level, where I want to see you as businesses also participating, and in terms of how you are assisting the businesses in the area, and also how you want government to assist you. This is where I want the one hand to wash the other one. Don't expect government to wash both of your hands. We would like you to also wash the other hand and help to develop the small and medium enterprises and support them, and also youth-based enterprises. And I'd like to throw another challenge at the private sector. I asked earlier when I came in, I said, how many youth centers do we have in this district? They said we have 10 youth centers where young people go to get a whole number of assistance measures, programs, or, and so on. And I asked, how many business incubation centers do we have? I was told that we only have 5. Only 5 in this very big district of eThekwini. And that, in my view, should not be the case. And I want to make a call that businesses should be the ones who lead in helping and working with government to establish business and incubation centers. Because many of our people were held back from operating in businesses. They now need a great deal of assistance. They now need a great deal of training as well. And it is through incubation centers that we find that we are able to hold the hands of small, medium enterprises, launch them, and get them to operate. There are quite a number of business incubation centers that are operating in the country, and they're doing a really fantastic job. We want to call on business, and I want to call on the Durban Chamber of Business. You may well be doing it, but I'm calling on you again. I'd like to see you establish and work with government to establish business incubation centers, particularly for women as well as for young people. And it does not cost so much money to establish a business center. I know of an organization where it costs about 15 million rand to establish a business center, and they are able to accommodate 50 or more people for a set period, and thereafter they launch them into the economic landscape. And I therefore want to appeal to you, this is my message to you, that help in assisting these small businesses, because it is through supporting these small businesses that we will be able to reduce the level of unemployment in our country. Andrew said that there are people who go around who claim political backing and do a whole number of wrong things, and we know that. And they make various claims and demands and all that, including these people who invade sites. Those people who invade sites, you complained that some of them have not been arrested. Yes, we are going to be focusing on them. We're focusing on them, some of them are known, and we are going to deal with them. And quite effectively for that matter, because they are impeding the development of our economy. In some cases, in the Eastern Cape, they even stopped the construction of a bridge on a major route that should never have been the case, and we are now going to act to stop that. And I'm glad to hear that there are engineers who are willing to offer themselves to come in and work with our authorities, and our mayor has paid close attention to what you have said, because this is where we need to bolster the skill base that we have. And I know that, yes, they may well be prepared to work for free. I welcome that, and we will be paying attention to how best they can be brought in to come and help. Small municipalities, this was raised by the gentleman from SAPI. Small municipalities are facing a huge problem. But let me tell you that we have embarked on a program of solving the challenges that even our small municipalities are facing. And this has actually been sort of acted upon here in KZN. In KZN, the governing party has been focusing more and more on how we can get our small municipalities, our municipalities as a whole, to begin to work more effectively in addressing the needs of our people. They are able to sit down and evaluate the performance of municipalities and people who have been deployed in municipalities. Now, that is now going to be the norm. And where we will find weaknesses in our municipalities, we are the ones as the governing party who are going to be actively involved in making sure that we straighten out the challenges and the problems. At government level, Minister Dlamini Zuma is already working on a very clear program on not only how to evaluate our municipalities, on how we can deal with the weaknesses that have come into our municipal space. So our municipal area is now going to be resolved. And I always say that in the end, investments happen right at the municipality level. They don't happen in the union buildings. Mara, who wanted to invest in our economy, did not go to take his money to the union buildings. He brought it here to eThekwini. And it was here where there was active cooperation between the company and our local authority that enabled that investment to finally take place. So we are going to be focused on this to make sure that indeed your investments are well protected and the constraints and the regulatory clutter that you've been coming across is actually removed so that your investments can take place. The non-payment to service providers, this has been a perennial problem in government, but we are addressing it. And we are now going to be dealing from a performance management point of view to deal with those officials who refuse to pay service providers on time. And we say, you do it without reason, you are actually going to be accountable, and it might even affect your own pocket. So that is where it is going now. Working with township youth, from the presidency point of view, we are now finalizing the finishing touches on a massive program that we are going to come up with on youth employment. And we're going to be working with the National Youth Development Agency and a number of other agencies, including a number of companies. We want to get tens of thousands of young people into job opportunities, into proper training, and this is going to be quite impactful as we move forward. And we will be making announcements as we move on, because it's critically important that the young people of our country must be properly engaged in work and also in training. Someone then raised a question, I think it was Brian, about education. And he was suggesting that we need to focus on how our education is actually structured. And I'm pleased to say that with the various developments, we're now beginning to recalibrate the offerings in our schools. And this is paying really wonderful dividends. And we're finding that young people at primary school level are actually opting more and more for technical subjects that are now on offer. And this is giving them a wonderful pathway. And we've now approved, well, easily almost 20 technical subjects that are now being offered at the school level. At school level, and young people are opting for those. And Minister Motshekga tells me that more and more young people are going for them. Now, on funeral policy, this is a tricky one. Why is government allowing big companies to get into the funeral space that is occupied by black funeral policy operators? Now, one needs to think a little bit more about this one, because it's a question, yes, of competition. We live in a country which has an open economy, and where everyone is, in terms of the constitution, is allowed to start a business and even compete and all that. The only way we could do it is through incentives and say we want to incentivize those who were previously disadvantaged and so forth. But to say you may not get into business where you try and get business from black people as a white-owned company or an existing insurance company may be difficult. And we need to look at how we can assist those funeral undertakers to compete much more effectively. So I think one needs to approach it that way. You will have to go to Luthuli House to go and find out why the ANC is saying that they want to have an insurance policy for their members and are talking to certain entities. The sugar industry one, the minister addressed it. My brother Paul spoke about rehabilitation of our roads and so forth, and that becomes a lot easier when our municipality is much more effective, much more on the ball, and is able to meet the needs of our people as a whole. Someone spoke about the issue of procurement, which Premier Sihle Zikalala did address, and I agree with him completely in as far as that is concerned. Someone actually raised an interesting point about bakeries, because you spoke about bakeries. He said, we must be the only country in the world where the huge monopoly bread companies are the ones who sell bread to the nation. In other countries, it's usually small bakeries that bake bread. You go to the corner shop and you get warm, freshly baked bread. And that is where I think your small, medium enterprises now need to go. As we promote our township economies and as we open pathways for our people through our incubation centers, we will be able to demonstrate to our people that indeed this is the way to go. I want to end, colleagues, by saying, I think what we now want from all of us is to say, what is it that we can all do for our country, for our economy? On the government side, we are irrevocably committed to making sure that we do everything that we can to grow the economy of our country. And we are also committed to listening to the views and the suggestions that come from business. You will find that all of us, without fail, are willing to engage, are willing to listen, are willing to take even proposals and ideas from business, because you are the real operators. You have a government that wants to build a compact, a government that wants to be as transparent as possible, but a government that wants to engage. We want to work with business at close range, but we also want business to be able to demonstrate, and I don't want to use a heavy word like it's patriotism, but we want business to demonstrate that it is also committed to the developmental agenda that we have. Because it is through this developmental agenda that we will be able to foster progress, job creation, reduce inequality. And one says this because, colleagues, compatriots, we cannot carry on in the same old way that we have, where we do not have an inclusive economy. And I want to say that even your companies should not think that they will continue operating in the same old way, where they do not have inclusive growth and involvement of our people. All over the world, companies are beginning to examine their own strategies and the way they work, their cultures and everything. And they are beginning to move to a point where they say, we've got to be inclusive. Even on difficult issues such as land, where we have to deal with the land issue, we are saying companies must know that the land question has to be dealt with. The skills question has to be dealt with. The issue of empowering women has to be dealt with. The issue of empowering our young people has to be dealt with. So there are no longer any holy cows. What we now need to do is to put our heads together and say, how are we going to work together to solve these challenges that we face? Because you can no longer be exclusionary. We now need to be inclusionary. And companies that seek to focus only on profit and nothing else are companies that will find that in the future there is very little running space left for them. It is companies who are going to be much more integrated in their approach, in the way that they work. Now, today, you are getting a very clear invitation from government that is saying, we want to work with you. We want you to be part of this district development process that we have embarked upon. We want you as the chamber to be involved in the Kauleza project that we have embarked upon. Work with us, engage with us, and walk this journey with us. Because if you don't, you will be left behind as people move ahead and come up with their own solutions on things that matter to you. And it is important that we should then work together in an engaged manner to resolve all these problems. Overall, it also involves investments. We want you to invest. For quite a long time now, the private sector has not been investing. And what I want to say as I conclude is that we are doing our part to boost confidence, to address the challenges, to address the impediments that you may well have had as a business. It is now up to you to demonstrate what you can do for your country to move this country forward. Thank you very much.
All right, that's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the KZN province today at the Durban ICC. The president addressing the Chamber of Business there. Of course, he's talking about Eskom, which is on everybody's lips recently.